Hi guys, I'm Lindsay, and so the topic that I'm talking about today is the Armory Show in New York City in 1913. So before we start talking about it, I just want to start off with a quote that says, "No single event before or since has had such an influence on American art," and that was from Lloyd Goodrich, and that was in one of the sources that I found. And so basically, the Armory Show in New York City was basically the first of its kind. It was an art show that had exhibited art from American artists and exhibited art from European artists. So just a general overview of what it is. Like I said, it's an art show that had never happened before. It was in 1913. Americans had never seen anything like the Armory Show before. However, the show allowed Americans to see modern art just because, like I said, nothing has ever been like it before. So when this occurred, everyone wanted to go see it, obviously. So there had never been anything like it before. It was the first of its kind, and it was a large exhibition of modern art. There had been many shows like this occurring in Europe. However, the Armory Show allowed people to view art from not only America, but Europe too. So like some of the famous artists like Van Gogh and Picasso and everything were exhibited at the Armory Show. And this was just a big deal just because, people in America, like flying wasn't as common as it is today, or taking a boat over would take weeks. So being able to see art over in Europe come to America is a big deal just because people obviously aren't going to want to go over to Europe just to buy a piece of art that they could just see in America with something like this. So this is obviously definitely a really big deal. And like I said, it's kind of like a rock tour, like a rock band going on tour. So it started off in New York City, and then it went to Boston, and it also went to Chicago. So it moved around the country, which is kind of nice, because then people didn't have to come from all over just to New York City just to see it. So then, as we talked about before with the quiz on Inquisitive, with the progressive movement and what we're talking about and everything, and one of the sources that I found, it says that the Armory Show is said to have shared more ideas and concept with the progressive movement in Europe than has been acknowledged. So in previous years, people have not really associated the Armory Show with the progressive movement as much as it should have, but in all honesty, it should be just because a lot of the art that was being portrayed in the Armory Show was new, and the term that they used to call this was avant-garde. I think I pronounced that right, which basically meant that it's basically a term that someone would use like today as kind of like a slang term, I guess. But it was basically just used to show like, oh, this is like a new idea, or this is like a new trend or something that like this artist has used or whatever. So some of the ideas that they used that were new were called Fauvism, Cubism, and Futurism. Hopefully I said all this right. But I'm sure that, if I didn't say that people have seen it before. And if you go on the website and look at some of the images, I'm sure you can see that, like what Cubism is and like what Futurism is. Those concepts were definitely new at that time period. So for people to come and see this was like eye-opening. It was kind of like when the iPhone first came out. People were like, oh my gosh, a phone with no buttons. Amazing. Anyways, so moving on. So the Armory Show was the idea of the Association of American Painters and Sculptors, which is AAPS for short. And it was only started with like a group of like 4 or 5 of them, I think, and then it grew to be a bigger group. But their sole purpose was to share these new ideas in art with not only America, but like I said, as in Europe. And so the president of this association, his name was Arthur B. Davies, and he was, at first, when they first started, was described as charismatic. He was a really good fundraiser. He was a really good leader. He was someone that people wanted to be around, that they wanted to follow, and he set a good example. And then as time went on, he ended up becoming, first of all, he had 2 families, and they didn't find out about each other until after his death, which, kind of awkward. Anyways, but imagine being that family. Anyways, so then after a while and time went on, and I'm sure the stress of keeping families from each other was very stressful, people described him as being a dictator, severe and arrogant, and so, obviously people aren't going to want to be around that. But another fun little fact was that the Armory Show got its name because it took place in an army of the National Guard. So that was something new as well, just because like now whenever we go to see art, we usually go to a museum to see it, but this was in the Armory. And so another thing is just that around this time in America, It's in 1913, so it was pretty much a year before the start of World War One. And so, and also in 1913, Woodrow Wilson was inaugurated as president in March. So this time is important for America just because at the end of the 1910s and then started beginning of 1920s, after World War One, America was pretty much prospering. Hence Roaring Twenties and The Great Gatsby, which I'm sure we're going to get to later. But if anyone's ever read it, but just the lavish lifestyle that people were living in the 20s is completely different than what they were living at the end of the 20s and in the 30s during the Great Depression. And then after the Great Depression was over, we had World War II, which again, who wants to be in war again? So just with all these upcoming events after the Armory show, it's a pivotal time just because it allowed the artists to express their modern ideas before things got bad. So personally, I just feel like the Armory show made people more accepting of the arts, because it just shows that even now at LVC we have an art gallery on campus that allows students to go and show their work, and so anyone can go. It's free to get in. So just allowing this show to allow people to express their ideas and to express these new ideas is just it's very inspirational, and it's a turn point in history just because now art is being accepted and people want to go see art and people want to start buying art, and it's not just from artists in Europe, it's from artists in America. And like I said, America has a completely different history than what Europe has. So a lot of the art that is showed in the Armory show is special to American history, and just with slavery and the wars that we went through and everything that we had to get through to be where we are today. So I guess the last couple questions I would ask is just without the Armory show, would these new ideas such as Cubism and Futurism be around today if it wasn't for the Armory show? And would people's work be shown if it wasn't for the Armory show? And would people be scared to show their ideas? So then the two questions that I'm asking you guys is, after talking about this influential movement during a pivotal time in American history, what do you guys think made this movement so influential? So going back to our first response about the Sears company, personally I think that luck was on Sears' side. He came at a very convenient time for people, and he had a good idea that people really wanted to use. So do you guys think that luck was on its side when this happened? Do you think that it happened at a good time? What made this movement so influential? So if you want to look at some of the artwork on the website that she had posted, feel free to talk about how some of the individual pieces you think are very influential, and how they depict American history, or just what you think about it, and what makes the artwork different from the time before that. Why was this artwork so different? And feel free to also use another event in American history similar to this one that was very pivotal to support your argument. And then the second question would be, do you feel that art nowadays was as influential as it was back then? So as over 100 years have passed and so many ideas have been brought up, are there more ideas to paint or sculpt? Is there potential for another Armory show in the future?